at it again, baby, and we got the brothers Thomas Sowell and Jordan Peterson. Let's dive in.
You may not realize it, but you are currently funding some dangerous people. They are indoctrinating young minds throughout the West with their resentment-ridden ideology. They have made it their life's mission to undermine Western civilization itself, which they regard as corrupt, oppressive, and patriarchal. If you're a taxpayer or paying for your kid's liberal arts degree, you're underwriting this gang of nihilists. You're supporting ideologues who claim that all truth is subjective, that all sex
I ain't got no choice but to pay taxes, you know. That just is what it is, you know. I'm not gonna say no to Uncle Sam, okay? We're not gonna go that route.
You're supporting ideologues who claim that all truth is subjective, that all sex differences are socially constructed, and that Western imperialism is the sole source of all third world problems. They are the postmodernists, pushing progressive activism at a college near you. They produce the mobs that violently shut down campus speakers, the language police who enshrine into law use of fabricated gender pronouns, and the deans whose livelihoods depend on madly rooting out discrimination, where little or none exists. Their thinking took hold in Western universities in the 60s and 70s, when the true believers of the radical left became the professors of today. And now we rack up education-related debt, not so that our children learn to think critically, write clearly, or speak properly.
Ooh, say that again, JP, please.
Not so that our children learn to think critically, write clearly, or speak properly.
I can definitely agree with that. Critical thinking skills are at an all-time low. People lack that ability. And also, college tuitions are just like, just through the roof. Like, you're stuck paying a college tuition for the rest of your life. Maybe not for the rest of your life, but for a good portion of your life, because that bill is just so high. It's crazy. It's crazy how expensive some schools can really get.
Properly, but so they can model their mentor's destructive agenda. To understand and oppose the postmodernists, the ideas by which they orient themselves must be clearly identified. First is their new unholy trinity of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is defined not by opinion, but by race, ethnicity, or sexual identity. Equity is no longer the laudable goal of equality of opportunity, but the insistence on equality of outcome.
I've spoken about how I disagree with that. I agree with equality of opportunity, but not equality of outcome, for obvious reasons. And like I said, I've spoken about that several times in previous videos.
Inclusion is the use of identity-based quotas to attain this misconceived state of equity. All the classic rights of the West are to be considered secondary to these new values. Take, for example, freedom of speech, the very pillar of democracy. The postmodernists refuse to believe that people of goodwill can exchange ideas and reach consensus. Their world is instead a Hobbesian nightmare of identity groups warring for power. They don't see ideas that run contrary to their ideology as simply incorrect. They see them as integral to the oppressive system they wish to supplant, and consider it a moral obligation to stifle and constrain their expression. Second is rejection of the free market.
I definitely think we should maintain free speech, and wherever or whenever it is threatened, we should make our voices heard, and make our voices heard loud, 100%. That's just the way that I feel about it. Y'all can let me know if you agree or not in the comment section.
Of the very in their expression. Second is rejection of the free market, of the very idea that free voluntary trading benefits everyone. They won't acknowledge that capitalism has lifted up hundreds of millions of people, so they can, for the first time in history, afford food, shelter, clothing, transportation, even entertainment and travel. Those classified as poor in the U.S. and increasingly everywhere else are able to meet their basic needs. Meanwhile, in once prosperous Venezuela, until recently the poster child of the campus radicals, the middle class lines up for toilet paper. Third and finally, in once prosperous Venezuela, until recently the poster child of the campus radicals, the middle class lines up for toilet paper.
What? Is that real? Do I got any brothers and sisters from Venezuela that can confirm or deny that? Let me know in the comment section, please.
Third and finally are the politics of identity. Postmodernists don't believe in individuals. You're an exemplar of your race, sex, or sexual preference. You're also either a victim or an oppressor. No wrong can be done by anyone in the former group, and no good by the latter. Such ideas of victimization do nothing but justify the use of power and engender intergroup conflict.
Are we becoming a nation of intellectuals?
I hadn't thought of that. It's because we're becoming a nation of people who are propagandized from elementary school right on through to the graduate school in a certain vision of the world. And only the ones who, for one reason or another, either experience or insight or whatever, leads them to say, wait a minute. Only those are the ones that we have to depend on.
This is an excerpt taken from the book Intellectuals and Society by Dr. Thomas Sowell. He saw this a long time ago. Back in the 18th century, William Godwin articulated this argument when he said, "The next generation will not have so many prejudices to subdue. Children, according to Godwin, are a sort of raw material put into our hands. Their minds are like a sheet of white paper. At the same time, they are oppressed by their parents, and must go through, according to him, 20 years of bondage before they receive the scanty portion of liberty, which the government of my country happens to concede to its adult subjects." William Godwin's notion that the young are a sort of raw material put into our hands remains, after 2 centuries, a powerful temptation to classroom indoctrination in schools and colleges.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. Kids are like a blank sheet of paper and can easily be influenced. And I'm of the belief that parents should be involved in what their kids are being taught in school, but you can let me know how you feel about it. If I have any teachers that are part of the family here on the channel, let me know how you feel.
In the early 20th century, Woodrow Wilson wrote of his years as an academic administrator when he felt, "I should like to make the young gentlemen of the rising generation as unlike their fathers as possible." This indoctrination can start as early as elementary school, where students are encouraged or required to write about controversial issues, sometimes in letters to public officials. More fundamentally, the indoctrination process habituates them to taking sides on weighty and complex issues after hearing just one side of those issues. Moreover, they are habituated to venting their emotions, instead of analyzing conflicting evidence and dissecting conflicting arguments. In short, they are led to prepackaged conclusions, instead of being equipped with the intellectual tools to reach their own conclusions, including conclusions different from those of their teachers. In many colleges and universities, whole academic departments are devoted to particular prepackaged conclusions, whether on race, the environment or other subjects, under such names as black, women's or environmental studies. Few, if any, of these studies include conflicting visions and conflicting evidence, as educational rather than ideological criteria might require. One of the remarkable self-indulgences of contemporary educators in the public schools has been the introduction into classrooms of programs which systematically undermine moral principles that have come down over the centuries, and which children have been taught by their parents. These programs have usually been developed by intellectuals outside the field of education, extensively marketed by both commercial firms and non-profit organizations, and are often eagerly embraced by educators who have been taught in schools of education that their role is to be that of agents of social change, not simply transmitters of a heritage of knowledge. These programs have a remarkable variety of names and ostensible goals, one of the earliest names being values clarification, though other names have proliferated after parents and others discovered what values clarification really meant in practice and raised objections. The phrase values clarification is very misleading. When parents tell their children not to steal or lie, or engage in violence, there is no ambiguity as to what they mean. Ambiguity is introduced by programs which confront students with carefully crafted moral dilemmas, such as a situation where a ship is sinking and there are more people than the lifeboats can hold, so that decisions have to be made as to who is to be left to drown, perhaps beaten off when they try to climb out of the water onto a lifeboat that is already so full that it will capsize if another person climbs in. Because received moral principles do not always apply, the implication is that each individual should develop his or her own situational ethics to replace traditional morality, not only where traditional moral principles fail but in the vast range of more ordinary situations where there are no such dilemmas as those in contrived examples. If such exercises seem remote from the purposes of a public school education, they are not remote from the philosophy introduced into
The way that I feel about, well, I'll just let it finish.
education by John Dewey a century ago, and promoted by schools of education to the present day. Nor were they remote from the thinking by Woodrow Wilson. Like so much in the vision of the Anointed, this view of education exalts those who believe in it, and so it is not simply a set of testable hypotheses about social events. Also, like other aspects of that vision, there is no price to be paid by its promoters for being wrong. However, larger price ends up being paid by individual students or by society at large. Values clarification has been just one of a wide range of high-sounding names for classroom programs to reshape the attitudes and consciousness of the younger generation. Other names have included effective education, decision-making, quest, sex education, and many other imaginative titles. Such titles are often simply flags of convenience, under which schools set sail on an exciting voyage in an uncharted sea of social experimentation in the reshaping of young people's beliefs and attitudes. The ever-changing names for these programs reflect the need for concealment or misdirection, since few parents want to be told that schools are out to undo what the parents have taught their children or to mold those children to be what third parties want them to be. To help spread Thomas Sowell's message around the world, please consider subscribing.
The way that I feel about it is school should be simply to learn. We shouldn't be talking about any type of politics. But that's just my opinion. Y'all can let me know how you feel about it in the comment section. If we're going to sway off that teaching path in any type of way, it should be to teach kids how to critically think, how to formulate opinions for themselves, and not just rely on what somebody said and they just go repeat it and, take it as gospel. Which is why I always say, hey, fact check. Several of you guys have, kind of jokingly said in the comment section, hey, yo, this is Thomas Sowell. So, he is the fact check. But I never want to become complacent and just take someone's word as gospel all the time. Because then I feel like I can be taken advantage of very, very easily. And I think anybody could. We always want to fact check individuals. I don't care who they are, what their stature is, Thomas Sowell, Jordan Peterson, whoever. We should always want to fact check. That's just my opinion on it. But y'all can let me know how you feel about it in the comment section below. Like, share, comment, and of course, hit the subscribe button before you go. Peace and love. I'm out.